Hello Dodo crew and welcome back to a video on ARK Survival Ascended. Today I'm going to showcase 20 tips and tricks for playing PvP. I'll be starting off with some basic tricks and gradually getting to more advanced stuff later in the video. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. Grabbing other players and smashing them onto the ground is still one of the easiest ways to get kills in ARK Survival Ascended. When encountering an enemy with a flyer, you can grapple onto the ground to block the enemy from grabbing you. This works especially well against PTs and archers. When facing bigger flyers like the Wyvern or a Rhynio, dodging a Rhynio's or Wyvern's grab is a little easier, but you need to avoid their breath attack at all costs. If the player still grabs you, you can always grapple onto the dino to break out of its grab. For this reason, you should also bring some parachutes, because after breaking the grab, you will still smash onto the ground and otherwise would still take some damage. But did you know, if you are the grabbing player, you still can smash the grappled player on the ground by flying close to the ground and by swinging your PT up and down. This smashes the enemy against the ground multiple times. Overall, the enemy takes less damage, but you can get a kill that way from time to time. If you are playing PvP, a crossbow with good durability has to be in one of the first slots of your hotbar, and always put at least a stack of grappling hooks in your inventory before you leave your base. If you lack a crossbow and are in the early game, a whip can also do the job. Whipping other players while being grabbed is much harder, but you can eventually get a kill if you can hit the other player off guard. When using whips, always remember that you need to hit the player, not the dino. This makes it more viable against PTs and archers, because players are easier to hit on those. If you hit the player with a whip, the player gets unmounted from the dino. Sometimes it is not you grappling, but the enemy. Getting grappled and being pulled into turrets or getting burned by flamethrower is pretty painful and feels like you can do nothing about that. Many players don't realize that they can cut the grapple using a sword or a hatchet and simply accept their fate. When grappled, pull out your sword and wildly swing at the line between you and your enemy. By hitting that line with a sword or a hatchet, you can cut the grapple between you and the enemy. When leaving your base, at least a primitive sword has to be in your hotbar. If you already got a sword with good durability and a great amount of damage, you need to use this sword as fast as possible, because you can also use that sword to scare enemies when they grab you with their PTs. Swords deal a huge amount of damage, and a lot of players release the grab in shock after seeing how much damage a sword can do with only a few hits. Worse than being grappled is being hit by a Bolas. For many players, this means losing all their stuff and accepting their fate, while standing around and enduring what's coming next. If you get caught and have a shield with you, switch to your shield as quickly as possible. Crouch down and point it at your opponent. As long as you remain crouched and hold your shield between you and your opponent cannot do any damage to you. Your opponent will try to circle around you and get behind you, or jump and shoot at you from above. Turn with your opponent and try to block the shots as good as you can. If your shield breaks, it is not over yet. You can still use Bolas to fight your opponent. This does not protect you from incoming damage, but it can prevent your opponent from running around and attacking you from behind. If you hit your opponent with a Bolas after they have hit you with one, you can either run away after you're free again, or turn the tables and attack your opponent. If you can't do any of this, or you have done everything and you're still not free, then there's only one chance for you. You have to move as much as possible, so that your opponent can't hit you. Flop around like a wild Sith, crouch on the ground and jump up, and do everything as fast as you can. Click crouch, fast, and do push-ups on the ground. If you do this well, you can buy a lot of time and maybe still escape in the end. So that you no longer need to be scared of Bolas in the future. Whenever you leave your base, you need to pack your best shield, a crossbow with grappling hooks and Bolas, and place them in your hotbar. Another way to keep your enemies away from you is with poison grenades. These grenades can save your life, especially on one-man or two-man tribes. You should have at least a few poison grenades in your inventory. Other players so rarely walk around with gas masks that you can easily knock out another player in a fight, even if he is sitting on a dino. If a Bolas hits you, just throw a few gas grenades around you and put on your gas mask. Your opponent won't be able to get close to you and will have difficulties killing you. The longer your opponent is in a gas grenade, the more torpor he builds up. Especially opponents who have not invested any points in fortitude will drop like flies from the saddles of their dinos. You can always take poison grenades with you on a raid. There is nothing worse than being knocked out by an opponent during a raid and being captured and only being able to watch your base fall. You should always have a few poison grenades in your inventory when you leave your base. You don't have to have them on the hotbar if you don't have room for them, but you should at least have them in your inventory. You know the situation. You're walking around farming fiber and suddenly a player randomly lands next to you with his PT. You don't know how, but he did not see you. You don't have much with you. Your PT is in a cryopod, and if you throw it, the opponent would see you. You would lose a direct fight, and you know that. The player jumps off and starts snacking on a few berries without seeing you. You don't have much in your inventory, but in the last drop, you looted a C4 remote and 2 charges. You can't do much with your long neck though. The PT is too fast for that, and would probably smash you on the ground immediately. The C4 is all you need. For some time now, it has only been possible to stick one C4 on a dino, which results in a movement speed reduction for the dino. You now sneak up on the PT and prepare a trap. Stick a C4 on the PT and then hide. If the enemy is not careful, you can attack him, and as soon as he jumps onto his PT, he can only fly very slowly. This is the moment when you shoot at the enemy's PT. Your long neck does good amount of damage, but the C4 does the rest. Your opponent can't flee, and you might even get the second shot in before you blow up the C4, causing your opponent to drop on the ground in front of you. It is always a good idea to have a few C4 charges and a detonator with you. You can either open small stone bases, which usually have metal, cementing paste or some blueprints in them, or build small traps for enemies with it. For real, do open these small bases. Some people just don't know how valuable their blueprints are. You can find good flak or saddle BPs so easy if you blow these small bases. Talking about people not hiding their stuff, you should hide your stuff. Especially if you play solo or small tribes, it is essential for you to craft and build some backup storages. This means you should always have stuff hidden somewhere on the map. There are countless ways to hide your stuff. You can tame some Polovios, fill their inventory and bury them somewhere in the forest. You can build storage containers and hide them in cracks, rat holes or in algae underwater. Or you simply build storage containers, place them in the middle of the forest where no one looks for them and place a metal foundation on top so that enemies cannot access the container. I would suggest the storage containers because they're easy to make and people rarely find and blow them. On the island, for example, I made good experience with hiding storage containers in the water close to the obelisks, because there is nothing in the water except from some fish. No one is diving there and therefore no one can find your loot. Fill those backup containers with blueprints, gears, taming equipment, crafted structures and resources. I mean, basically everything you need to get back into the game after you got wiped. Claim a few rat holes and split your stuff between these rat holes, and if one gets destroyed, who cares? You have many more and can get back into the game very fast. Even on 4-man tribe clusters, I always build an emergency teleporter close to some vaults. Where in emergency, I simply grab all the stuff in the vaults and then teleport out of my base into the next one. Weapons in ARK have different reload animations in first and in third person. This means they are loaded at different speeds depending on how you play the game. This is particularly noticeable with the pump action shotgun. Instead of reloading the 6 cartridges individually, you reload all 6 at once in one animation when you are in third person mode, especially in a duel or if you are grabbed by a dino. This time can save your life, because you can deal more damage in a shorter time. You should always bring a weapon with you if you leave your base. In PvP, you can always use a sniper, a shotgun, a flamethrower or a compound bow. Just ignore the assault rifle, this thing is useless. Now that you know what to have in your hotbar, you need to remember where you placed each item. If you come across someone, get grabbed by someone or someone shoots at you, you have to react correctly without looking to see where you placed each item or looking at your keyboard and searching for the right key. Use the keys 1 to 5 for the important items like weapon, crossbow and grapples, med brews, parachutes and bolas, and 6 to 9 for situational items like a binocular, flamethrower, a sword or stims. Do not place items on buttons, where you have to break your fingers to reach them quickly. The items you have in your hotbar can vary depending on what you're doing and how you're playing the game. The Wyvern received an upgrade since ASA was released. Thanks to the improved snapping feature, you can now shoot while riding your Wyvern. Although it might not be what you expected. You can unmount your Wyvern while flying and stand on top of its body. It is especially useful if you're being chased or if you're chasing someone. If someone is fleeing from you, you can unmount your Wyvern and shoot at the enemy with a sniper rifle, for example. With this strategy, you can down their flyer quickly, because they do not expect you to suddenly shoot at them. If someone is chasing you, you can use a flamethrower, Bolas or a shotgun to pressure your enemies, depending on the attacking flyer. Wyverns and PTs are especially vulnerable because Wyverns do not carry saddles and therefore take a lot of damage from weapons like snipers and shotguns. And PTs have a very small health pool, which means that they die after a few hits. While standing on your Wyvern, it still loses stamina, but much less than if you were flying around with it. In fact, it loses 1 stamina per tick, which lets you stand in the air for quite a while. You can even move and run while standing on your Wyvern, but you need to be a little careful, because you do not want to get pushed off it. This can not only be used to shoot at enemies, but you can also use it to tame dinos. Especially aggressive dinos, like Rexes, can be tamed very easily this way, because they cannot attack the Wyvern. They will run to your dino and stand under it, looking at your Wyvern's belly until they are knocked out. Since Scorched Earth was released and I noticed that you can unmount your Wyvern and shoot at enemies from its back, this strategy has helped me so many times. Many players just do not expect you to shoot at them while you are flying. I rarely use Rhynios because I don't really like the design, but you should use them as much as you can. Rhynios not only can take a few hits, but you can also use weapons while riding them. Overall, that is not too special, but you can also use the flamethrower while mounting a Rhynio. If you grab a player, you can pull out your flamethrower and burn the health player down to a crisp without risking anything. The grabbed player cannot do much if they do not have grappling hooks equipped. The Rhynio is way too sturdy to be easily killed by a shotgun or a sniper. You should be cautious of compound bows, but with your flamethrower you will kill the enemy way faster than they can deal serious damage to your Rhynio. Flamethrowers basically ignore the enemy's armor, which means you can kill players with ease, just by flying around and grabbing them with your Rhynio. Other players might call you a noob if you play with a flamethrower on a Rhynio, however, you will win the battle. It does not matter if you avoid using weapons like the flamethrower if you end up losing every battle because of that. I think it is better to be called a noob than to lose everything to some random dude. If you're fighting for your stuff in ARK, then use whatever you can. Stick to the rules, but fight as hard as possible. Even if you have to use weapons and strats that other people might call noobish, it is better to be a noob than a loser. If you have seen my video on movement speed, you know that in ASA you can no longer level your movement speed. However, Swamp Fever can grant you a 20% movement speed boost. This is particularly nice for PvP. On official servers, getting Swamp Fever usually is not a major problem, because everyone ends up with Swamp Fever from some random player or a dinosaur within an hour or two. On unofficial servers, it is more challenging, because these servers typically run for 4 to 12 weeks. Many players either don't get Swamp Fever during that time or fail to realize its significant benefits in PvP. Increasing your movement speed can significantly improve your chance to win in PvP. You become harder to hit by Bolas and weapons, and flying creatures struggle to grab you as you run away. Swamp Fever does come with drawbacks. It reduces all stats, lowers stamina regeneration, and increases food, water, and oxygen consumption. Especially with boosted rates on unofficial servers, the trade-off of gaining more movement speed while sacrificing some other stats is relatively small. If you're unsure whether you can safely enter a cave or want to assess the turret wall your enemy has built, you need to use photo mode. In photo mode, you gain access to a free float camera that allows you to scout your surroundings. The range of motion is limited, but sufficient to peek around corners or identify weak spots in your enemy's defense. I regularly use photo mode to scout enemy bases, to see the turret placement and strategize on how to avoid or destroy them. It helps me locating generators and observing the enemy while raiding. Photo mode has been a valuable addition in ASA, aiding in planning next steps and scouting without risking your own belongings. However, remember that you can be killed while in photo mode. A high level character is as important as having a character build that is in the current meta. It is crucial to minimize your character's size to make it harder to hit. The hitbox scales with the size of the character, meaning a smaller character is more difficult to hit. The easiest way to make a character PvP proof without needing much knowledge of the meta is to choose the female character model and adjust all sliders to the smallest size. This approach makes your character as small as possible. For even better protection, you can enlarge your arms, hands and legs so that if you do get hit, enemies are more likely to hit areas that are less damage sensitive. Basically, make everything that receives a lot of damage as small as possible and everything that receives small amounts of damage as large as possible. Your choice also depends on your playstyle, so try out a few models to see which one suits you best. Sure, I won't tell you that you shouldn't put all your points into food, water and oxygen, you already know that. But why are your levels always the same? You do know that you can use a mind wipe to reset your stats to be better equipped in different situations? You should get some mind wipe tonic and make good use of your levels. If you want to build yourself new armor or weapons, then put all your points into crafting skill. If you build something from a blueprint with this setup, the items will be much stronger than the original blueprint. If you want to venture out of your base to make some trouble, then it is best to level health, stamina and fortitude. If you want to tame the Yeti in the snow, then put some levels into fortitude. Your food and water will go down slower, and if your armor breaks, you won't freeze to death right away. Even oxygen makes sense from time to time, if you want to enter one of the underwater caves on the island or the center. What I'm trying to say is, when you're doing something, try to think about whether different leveling might be better for you. The Pyromane has several great and some broken abilities. It is very similar to the Ferox. This means it has two forms. First, its normal or lion form, which is also the form you will encounter on the center. In this form, you can ride it and use its abilities like the leap and the flame absorb. In this form, the Pyromane has 60 armor, which makes it an excellent early game tank and renders you immune to fire of all kinds. When the Pyromane is in shoulder pad form, it is basically an aimbotted flamethrower you can put on your shoulder. Just whistle it to attack your target and it will automatically ignite every enemy close to you. The flamethrower has always been one of the least popular weapons in ARK because it requires little skill in PvP and is relatively strong. Using the Pyromane, you can carry a flamethrower while you cannot be burned by anyone else. For a detailed description of the Pyromane, check out the linked video. For comments, I won't go into each detail. I've done 2 detailed videos on comments and how to use them. If you're playing PvP, you need to use comments, otherwise everyone else will see you earlier, longer and better while having overall better game performance. I understand what you mean, but if you don't use comments, then you suck. Not because you're a bad player, but because everyone else is using comments and gaining an advantage in PvP. Whether there's more FPS or a better view of enemies, almost all players use comments to improve their gaming experience. You need to start using comments. Not only do they improve your experience, but they also give you more FPS and advantages in PvP. The top 3 most important comments are reconnect. Reconnect simply reconnects you to the server you currently play on. This can be used if you bug out, have glitches or experience performance issues. This does not fully disconnect you, so even on servers that are capped, you can get back into game right away. Gamma helps you to see better in dark places. If you're building in caves, playing during nighttime or swimming around the ocean, you can set your gamma to 3 most of the time and have better awareness of your surroundings. I did several videos on which comments are best for PvP, but you can either watch the linked video or simply copy the comments from the description. Change your tribe name as many times as possible. You need to change it at least every time you log out, but also after you kill someone. If you kill someone from the Alpha tribe, just change your tribe name. Even if they try to raid you, they won't know that it was you who killed their members. The important thing is that you and your dinos stay inside your base. They won't see that this stuff is yours. And if you have raided and killed people during the day, make sure to change your tribe name whenever you log out. If your dinos stay outside of your base, make sure you also change their names as well. Do not use the chat if you're changing your name because someone will notice and then changing your name won't help you anymore. I use a team name generator and I will put this into the video description. But you can use basically any name that is friendly sounding or sounds like you're a PvE player. Pretty much everyone looking for you won't find you because they don't know that it was your tribe that raided them. Confidence is probably one of my biggest mistakes. I think I'm overconfident. A lot of times I will just go for fights I probably won't win. I always get into 2v1s and 3v1s because I cannot shut my mouth while playing PvP. In these situations you will most of the time lose your stuff and your dinos. For me, this is part of the fun, taking on 2 or 3 people at the same time, even if I might just die and lose some items. Find out what you're capable of and try to improve. Do not take on fights while you're stacked with valuable stuff and simply do not do stupid things. And last but not least, don't be afraid to PvP. I see a lot of people stay back and farm trying to ally with everyone on the server. It actually depends on your playstyle and how you want to play, but unless you actually get into PvP, you won't get any better. What's even the point of playing PvP if you stay back in your base and farm every day? Don't be afraid to raid and do PvP, just go with it and eventually over time you will get better. Do not farm all day long, let other people do the work and then take their stuff from them and use it yourself. You don't need to farm blueprints for hours or even days. All you need is one good raid and you probably have all the stuff you need in less than a day. Don't waste your time farming metal, poly or cementing paste, which eventually gets stolen from you by other players. Be the one who lets other people do your job. Enjoy the game. ARK is fun and honestly even if I got wiped, I never felt like I lost much. Every time I built a base and it got destroyed or I faced an enemy and got killed, I learned some valuable lessons. So you can't really lose in this game as long as you don't give up. You either win or you learn, but you will never lose playing ARK PvP. I hope you liked this video and I'm thrilled to read what tips you would place in your top 20 list. Hit the like button, leave a comment below for the algorithm and consider subbing to the channel. Alright, Frodo.